This family night lesson requires a cork and a bottle, hopefully a cork that fits in the bottle, nice tight.
Wait, where'd you get that bottle?
Well, this actually, since you asked that, this is a syrup bottle for snow cones.
Oh.
And the cork is, you can just buy corks at any crafty place. So,
It's a good sunrise, ain't you?
nice challenge. But this was actually when Kathy was pregnant with Joshua. She loved snow cones. It helped soothe her sick belly. So we got our own snow cone maker and bought a bottle of syrup from the snow cone guy. That's our snow cone bottle, but that's all unnecessary for the video. So anyway, you need a cork, you need a bottle, and you need a napkin. And then you need to open your brains for a second. Because what we're going to do is we're going to look at the idea that God is bigger than what we are able to understand. That he can't be fully understood, but he does desire to be known. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about here. We're going to use the story of Job as our basis for developing this idea. And what I learned the first time I ever taught a Sunday school lesson on Job, I was so struggling with what are we supposed to learn from the story of Job, because I was so baffled by the whole setup with Satan showing up in heaven and challenging God, and God saying, well, go ahead and do whatever you want to my servant Job. And I was like, what is going on? What is this story about? So I had to read the all 31 or so chapters before I could teach chapter 1. And I had to read them again. And what finally sunk into me was that the story of Job is not about God doing business with Satan. That's how it opens, is Satan shows up and says, God says, hey, have you considered my servant Job? And he says, well, he only is nice to you because you're nice to him. And if you took away all the blessings, then he'd start cursing you. And God says, hey, test him. And I thought, okay, well, if the story is about God doing business with Satan, then the end should be Satan comes back and God says, told you so, or something like that. But that's not how Job ends. Anybody remember how Job ends?
God admonishing his friends, right?
Yeah. I mean,
He's going to ask Job to correct with them.
yeah. The kind of what I think of as the climax of Job is when Job says, God, you got to come down here and answer me because it's not fair. And God shows up.
Mm-hmm.
And God does not explain himself to Job. He instead throws down the gauntlet and says, Job, who do you really think you are? Who do you think you're talking to? Did you create the sun? Did you create the seas? Did you put the stars in the heavens? Did you give, the Leviathan, whatever the Leviathan has? I don't remember the exact quote. But anyway, he just basically says, I do all of these things. You do not. You do not understand any of it. So you should probably button it. And Job says, I was speaking about things I didn't understand. And I'm going to button it. And at the end, Job seems to have not gotten an answer, and yet he seems to have been satisfied by God's presence. And we don't get an answer to Job's questions, but we get this glimpse that you don't have to have an answer if you have the presence of God. And so the way the story goes is Job and his buddies, Job starts suffering these afflictions, right? Satan takes away all the blessings. He loses all his wealth and his health and his family. And his friends come and they say, what are his friends? What's their basic notion of what's going on here?
You've done something.
He's done something wrong.
Yeah. So their idea of God, they think they've got God figured out. This is how God operates. He blesses people who are good, and he takes away the blessings when people are bad. He punishes bad, he blesses good. That's how God works. So clearly, Job, if you're suffering bad things, it's because you've got some sin and you need to confess it, repent, and get right with God. Because God blesses good people and He punishes bad people. That's how God works. How they got their mind wrapped around God. They think they understand God. It took me a while to realize Job has the same understanding of God. Job also thinks the way God works is He blesses good people and punishes unrighteous people. And that's what's bothering Job so much, is that God is not being fair. Because he doesn't think he deserves the bad things that are happening to him, because that's not how God is supposed to work. I'm good, therefore I should be getting my blessings. I'm not bad. I shouldn't be suffering these bad things. He's got the same understanding, limited understanding of God that his friends do. And that's what God comes in at the end to address. And I want to kind of illustrate that. If you could think of this bottle as Job and his friends as their brain, and whatever they think they understand is contained in this bottle. And think of the cork as their notion of who God is. And Chris, if you could just shove the cork all the way into the bottle. Just drop it. You might want to take the bottle out and hang it there. Just shove it all the way, poke it with your thumb, get it all the way in so it's rattling around on the bottom. Don't break my cork. You can do this. There we go. Yeah! Alright. So this, in my mind, this is a picture of what's going on with Job and his friends. They think they've got God figured out. It's almost as if they've got God contained. They understand God. This is how God works. And at the end of the story, God doesn't come in to modify the cork. He comes in to extract the cork. And there's a few ways he could have done that. How can I get the cork out of the bottle?
Break the bottle.
I could break the bottle. And that's something God could have done to Job and his friends. Now, he's not super gentle with them, but he's not so harsh that he crushes them. He doesn't break them. He's more merciful than that. Anybody know how I can get the cork out of the bottle without breaking it, other than the guys who've seen me do it before?
Physics.
There is some physics involved. That's kind of generic answer like Sunday school. Jesus. Well, for the sake of time, here's how I would do it. I would use a napkin. And I hope that this creates cognitive dissonance. Because I hope that you're saying to yourself, how is a napkin going to get the cork out of the bottle? Here's how. I'm going to shove the napkin down in, and you don't even have to say the magic words. Just shove it in. You can say magic words if you want, but we're not really learning about magic.
Like what?
I'm going to shove this thing in here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to shake the cork around until it's laying on the napkin. And then I'm going to pull, except that this time I'm going to need to shake it around a little more, and might have to try it a second time. This is the fun of family time. Sometimes you gotta go twice. So let's try it again. Get the cork on there. It might be easier if I get the cork facing narrowly in first. Come on, cork. Oh, it doesn't like to. There's a nestle spot. There's a nestle spot. So anyway, come on, cork.
Get at it for time.
I'm starting to feel good about this one. Still not getting there. You might just have to trust me that this works. There it is. I feel the golden opportunity. cork comes out. And that is, in my idea, an illustration of how God comes into Job. He doesn't modify the cork and let Job continue to think, okay, now I understand. He basically takes Job's idea away and then replaces it not with a new idea, but with his presence. And so it just reinforces to me the idea that God is not someone to be fully understood, but he is someone who wants to be known. And he's gracious about it. He doesn't crush us, though he could, but he is gracious in handling us and our misunderstandings. Anyway, that's my Job lesson with the cork. I love this one. Makes me think every time I do it. But as you can probably see now, it's probably not appropriate for the wheat ones. Just some heavy